Good morning. The world is awaiting this conversation, and that conversation today anchors itself in this question: why do great teams don't work for money and make a ton of money? Many leaders, business owners around the world, even family members, dream of creating a team of people who work and deliver their best, not because they're there to get paid, but because they want to. Not like they want to in order to get somewhere or get on somebody's good list, make their bosses proud or make their spouses proud. No, they're coming from a place where they're connected to something. And today's conversation is about your ability as a leader, as a business owner, as the head of a household, wherever you are, your ability to connect people to something that inspires them, like a mission. And today I have really the honor of being in conversation with you, Giovanni. I was speaking with you earlier and said, you know what? This is not a dream. This is not a pipe dream. The team we're talking about, you have actually built over the years. And I want to get a sense. And together, we want to give the world a sense of uh, how is it that great teams don't work for money? And in the process, end up making a ton of money. I mean, what was it like, Gio, day one when you contemplated pulling a team together to create the magic that mindful performance blueprint is? Uh, what what did you confront in terms of the pains and tribulations of a leader trying to create a team?
Yeah, Saurel, thank you. I'm excited about this question. Why great teams don't work for money and they make a ton of money and they make money, right? And I think that one of the key aspects that I want to start the conversation with, Saurel, and creating a context for everyone is perhaps in your question for me, I want to address some of the key aspects that I had to let go in order to create a powerful team. And I had to be present to what were the things I didn't like when I used to work either for corporate or I worked for a small business. Before I had my own business, I worked for corporate and I also worked for a small business. And there were aspects that I had to look, what was it that wasn't working when I work for either corporate or a small business. And it's about making a transition and what our industry calls it a transactional leadership. And what I
Mhm.
mean by that, Sorel, is that most of the leaders I work for or the bosses I work for, it felt like I was only a number. Like I didn't really matter necessarily as a human being. I was a piece of this big, big game called chess. So I mattered to the degree that I played my role. But as a human being, I didn't really matter. So the performance reviews and everything was around, are you delivering or not for us? Otherwise, you need to go. And so that made me feel like I didn't matter. And I was always afraid of making a mistake. And I was always trying to look good for the person. And I was always surviving, you know.
Yeah.
And
You
and
know,
that, yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
I was going to say that kind of environment, Gio, is the kind of environment that everyone would love to be in. You know, you go to work, you spend the majority of your life at work. So what we're talking about, what I hear you talking about, you, it's not like you tell somebody that I like you, you matter. No, leaders actually have the job of creating an environment, and the environment itself leaves people with the experience that they matter.
Yes, but first I
Yeah,
had to see, Sorel, that's kind of like what we're going next. But first I initially needed to see what I experienced while I was
yeah,
working for somebody else. And I didn't experience that. I didn't experience like I mattered. I experienced like I was a piece of a chess game and I didn't matter. The only thing that mattered was the numbers and the results and even some supervisors, bosses, leaders, every now and then will say in their big meetings, everybody's replaceable.
yep.
You
Show
know,
up on
even
time.
and even I am replaceable. So there is always this fear-based kind of environment, right? And so the problem with that is that that kind of environment, people only stick to that job if they get paid enough to tolerate the leader or to tolerate the boss. So most companies, and I really mean this, most companies have an environment where people only stay if they pay them enough to tolerate the leadership team. That's really how it is. Now, nobody ever says it, and I would never say it that way if I go to a client, but we gotta discover that. So I didn't want to create that for myself. I didn't want to I didn't want to create a team where they were there just for the paycheck. It's not big enough game. And so there was a big reflection that I needed to take a look at, and which was what were the best practices that I learned from working with many, many, many businesses from really high performing teams. And what I noticed is that there were some people that for me they were magical. Some people that actually create an environment that people love to go to work for. And
Mhm.
it's not an industry based. It's the leader personality, attitude, practices. It's and I was like, I want to create that for myself. So what what I like to create in this conversation with you, Sorel, and for everyone listening, is that you take away critical practices so that you can create an environment where the people you work with, they have a transition themselves as well.
Yeah.
And the transition is purpose driven, not paycheck driven or result driven, purpose driven. And that is the key aspects to creating and building a team that stays and
Yeah.
thrives with you.
So far you've let us know that in building a team, you first had to find yourself and say, "Oh my God, this is what I would want if I were to be in an environment." So transactional leadership and what I call the money or the paycheck trap, where you pay people enough to tolerate the environment or tolerate you, but it's never enough because next year they come, it's like they're blackmailing you. They come and they want more. So you have to give them more so they can continue to tolerate you. So what you're saying is that by doing that reflection, you actually found yourself a way out of that trap. You are able to pull together best practices from some of the best leaders you've worked for, and you've applied them to create the team you currently have. So tell us about that.
Yeah, so actually, the entire MPP building, the mission is around creating a new paradigm for being a leader. So we have to use those principles that we consult for other companies. We use them for ourselves, right? And then it's critical this conversation because um, the problem is not climbing a mountain. The problem is doing it yourself, by yourself, right? And a business is like climbing a mountain. And most entrepreneurs and business owners, they have the drive to climb the mountain. They have the drive to do it. And they're willing to die for it, for their business, for their vision, for their hunger. But they don't get too far because they do it by themselves, right? And anyway, different context for a corporation, but it's not very different per se. So here's what I've discovered over the years, and this is like a principle in leadership. People are willing to do more for an environment that inspires them than for a paycheck. And that's critical to discover. It's like a paradigm shift for the opportunity of leadership. People are willing to do more for an environment that inspires them than for a paycheck. So it's about creating a culture, whether it's a team of two or three or four or 1,000. It's about creating a culture where people feel that like they belong and they're part of something bigger than themselves. That's a critical aspect. So how do you do that? It's like the leader has to train himself or herself and then train his leadership team, his core team, right? to train others to become mission driven, not results driven, mission driven. And I know some people are listening up, but you've got to measure and yes, you got to do all that stuff. Of course, you got to do all that stuff. However, absent of being mission driven, the results driven organization, it's always dealing with the things that we get called for.
So, Gio,
Lawsuits.
I
Okay,
have a
go ahead.
question.
Yeah.
When you say mission driven, that always
Yeah.
sounds good, right? The organization is going to be mission driven. And I I recall a time when you were creating, molding, shaping that mission so that it becomes the organization's mission, your mission, the team members' mission. Could you tell us a little bit about the process of having a mission that is yours and inspiring enough so that the organization even has a chance of being mission driven?
Yeah, it's a beautiful paradigm shift for leadership for a
Yeah.
business owner because we all want to make money, right? And that's the main number one purpose of or reason for a business. We got to make money. However, money is not a necessarily a purpose that connects with a human being. And and I mean, everyone who has ever made money always says what Jim Carrey said, um, the actor. He said, "I wish everybody would make money so they would know that it's not the thing that solves, like that solves the problems, right?" So everyone who makes money knows that. And there is a threshold that where money creates happiness. That's for sure. I don't want to ignore that. Sure, that's for sure. I've been poor. I've been hunger. I've been, with all the things that people have dealt with. However, even though the number one reason for a business is to make money, that is not what connects people to their highest self. That is not what gets people to disabuse themselves with with really low standards for living. That is not what gets them to connect to a higher self. It's not going to be their paycheck. It's going to be the purpose that that business is about in the world. It's going to be about the impact that that business brings to the world, whether it's a business of one person, of two people, whether it's a business of 2,000. Every single business has an impact to society. And for the most part, business leaders don't get that. They don't get that for themselves. That it is their mission, the one that will create an environment for high performance that elevates the standards of everyone, not the opportunity to create a big paycheck for people.
Yeah, and it's not even the personality or the charisma of the leader that does that. It is that the leader himself or herself has created for themselves kind of connection to the mission, such that when wherever they are, it's not Geo that's there. It's actually the mission that's there. The mission speaks, the missions interacts, the mission has conversations with team members, and team members interact inside of maybe like it's almost as if like if I'm hearing you correctly, that the mission creates a container, and that container is the environment inside of which people work.
Yeah. Completely, completely. The other aspect that's critical to creating this environment where teams thrive is that the leader or the executive team, right, begins to create training or conversations on how every role connects to the mission. There's not a big role or there's a small role. There's not important people and less important people. No, every role connects to the mission, right? And that way, everyone in the organization begins to see that they matter because every role connects to the mission. And I love that example that I heard once that when Nixon went to NASA to see what was going on in this mega project to take the man to the moon, and then he asked the janitor, "What are you doing here?" and the janitor said, I'm putting a man in the moon. That way, that's a clear example of how that leader at that time created every role mission driven. Every single role is mission driven. And that elevates standards, that create high standards, and people want to reinvent themselves to something bigger than themselves. People don't want to reinvent themselves to having a cleaner bathroom. That nobody wants to do that. Or people don't want to reinvent themselves on necessarily creating the best campaigns in the world or writing the best emails or whatever it is that people do. People want to reinvent themselves against a mission. And that would be a critical aspect that a leader has to take himself or herself on. And that's all training. That's not intuitive. That's all training.
Yeah, and in that space, Gio, being authentic and recognizing people turns into something different, doesn't it? And how have you practiced being that way, being a leader, the leader who shows up as the mission, and recognizing others for showing up as the mission? And when you don't show up as the mission, what do you do?
Yeah, so I train my team on a weekly basis. On a personal basis, we train ourselves on a weekly basis to see themselves as the mission. So that's something we do on a weekly basis so that they see themselves as the mission and I see myself as a mission, as the mission. And in that context, I begin to create a transition where I am no longer the leader, the mission is the leader. The vision is the leader, the values are the leader of the organization, not me. And I don't want to be the leader of my organization because I'm a human being. And I have a lot of inauthenticities and I have a lot of flaws and I have a lot of integrity issues as a human being that I'm constantly reinventing myself and I am honestly trying to be a better human being, but I'm going to fail at that. However, what I can do is certainly connect people to something bigger than themselves. I can do that. And I can recognize them for that and I can honor them for that. And the people who want to play that game, they get to stay. And the people who don't want to play that game, they get to move on. But they're not moving on necessarily because I'm judging them. They're moving on because they didn't see themselves in that mission, And so that's a little bit of, and the other aspect, Sorrel, this is one I always like to say, and I got this from John Maxwell. He was in a training and he says, how do you know when somebody wants to be recognized? How do you know when somebody wants to be recognized? And he waits for everybody in the audience to say it, and everybody's saying something about that, you know, when they do something good or when they're on time and whatever it is, right? And he says, just check if they're breathing. Just check if they're breathing. That's how you know if they want to be recognized. And I get that. So I do have an environment we recognize ourselves in an authentic way on a regular basis because being human is difficult. Being
Yeah.
human is hard. We're constantly
Yeah.
judging ourselves.
And
Yeah,
there's a big difference between that environment where people are being recognized and acknowledged for being connected to the mission and producing something that's consistent with the fulfillment of the mission, rather than, oh, yeah, you did a good job. You produced that result. So you create an environment that reinforces itself over and over. Yeah,
exactly.
yeah. So
Exactly. Yeah.
I know you probably have to scud right now.
Well, I'm going to stay. Maybe there's any comments, questions, and then
Okay, good.
I'll scoop out at 9:30 exactly.
Okay, so let's take a couple of questions. Now, in the world of creating an environment, knowing that that environment is shaped by mission, where do you stand? Not you, Gio, I'm speaking to the rest of the world, the rest of the room. Where do you stand? What are you seeing? What are you discovering for yourself in the leadership of your own company that is connected to this conversation? Questions, comments, yeah, buts. We'd love to hear from you.
That was a difficult question, Sorrel. A little bit difficult. So I would say what I want to say, and just raise your hand if you have a comment or a question, right? Or a yeah, but, because we love those. What I want to say in this context of creating a dream team, right? And what I want to say is people want to be part of something bigger than themselves. And what
Always.
always, right? People want to be part of something. And so what I've noticed with entrepreneurs is that they are afraid to connect themselves to something bigger than themselves. And so they are afraid to share it with others. That's what I've noticed. So every time I have a chance to work with an entrepreneur who's just starting, I want to know why, what's driving their heart. And then we create structures on how to share it with others. Big ideas attract big minds, not big paychecks attract big minds. Big ideas attract big minds. And it's an aspect of vulnerability, but it's like a person needs to allow themselves to see who they are as big and to see what they're up to as big. One of our clients has is creating a franchise for tacos in Atlanta, and he puts the his banners in the stadiums, and he puts it everywhere. And in our conferences, he sponsors our conferences, and he's got 6 restaurants already. He's opening up 2. He's been growing. And when I had a chance to more, and I asked him, "What's driving you?" And then he said, "I love tacos, and I want everybody to know it." And I can see how his way of being about this idea of making the best tacos, man. It's probably going to be the next big franchise. I mean, they have 8 restaurants now. They have a brand now. I mean, he's phenomenal.
So
Yeah.
to have something bigger that employees and yourself get to be connected to doesn't have to be anything weird or significant. It could just be something like, man, I love tacos and I want to make the best tacos on the face of the planet. And if you love tacos and you want to make the best tacos on the face of the planet, come join this bus, right?
Yeah, and the way he brings these big ideas, he says, "I want to create a culture," or he has created a culture where people can come and grow and represent the best of the Hispanic community. So that it's inspiring. I want to create a work environment so that people can come and grow and open up their own restaurants and represent the best of the Hispanic community. That's somewhere like that is their mission. So when he's training his leaders on the mission, he's not training the leaders on onions or on beef. He's training their leaders on something that inspires them. And it can be tacos, it can anything at all.
So to make a ton of money and have a team that works just because they want to and you're not forcing them. I hear a few steps that I want to say out loud, Gio, before we finish. One has to create for oneself, like me, the leader, you, the leader, create something bigger than yourself and then share it with other people. Share it in such a way that it's not fully baked. You like give them the permission to add to it, take away from it. And then there's a statement that emerges from that exercise where it's the organization's mission. And it creates that environment that when somebody comes in, they're either in that or they're not. And if they're not, they can leave. And then on a weekly basis, you train yourselves and the team in actually connecting to it. And if I hear you correctly, Gio, how you connect to it is looking to see where in my work and my life have I been operating as if I am connected to that mission or not. And when I'm not, I true up and I keep moving. And I do that over and over. And when I am connected to it, you, the leader or a team member, recognizes me for being connected to it and celebrates that. And we do that over and over. So it's not about the money, really, when you're making a ton of money. It's about being connected to something bigger than yourself that leaves you elevated.
And then there's a
You
big
end up making
piece.
a ton of money.
Yes, and there's a big piece that I didn't include, but and we're not going to talk about it, but I'm going to say it. So,
Yeah.
is that as the leader, I've got to see people already big. I've got to see them. It's a declaration I bring to the table. It's a declaration the leader brings to the table. Everyone around me is big and they have access to excellence. And as a leader, because I see them big, I'm going to challenge them to be their fullest potential or their fullest self-expression. I'm going to do that. And
Yeah.
in my space, I'm going to challenge that, right? And some people rise to the challenge without guilt, without shame, without making something wrong. Some people are going to rise to the challenge and some people won't. But it's not because they're not big. And it's
Yeah.
not because I don't see them big. It's because they chose
Yeah.
no
This
to
environment is simply not their environment.
know their environment. So that's a
That's
big
it.
thing. It's a big thing. Is you've got to see people way bigger than they see themselves. That's critical.
Yeah.
Awesome, man. So let's wrap
So
up.
yeah, so this is the place, this is Impact, the Leadership Huddle, where we are committed to bring unique perspectives, unique leadership perspectives to everyday problem that everyday leaders just like you and me deal with. So thank you for being here. We'll be here again next Monday. So Gio, we've got 8 tenets for being a renegade leader, leading teams that make a ton of money. What are they?
Love it. Love,
Yep.
eat more plant-based, run, move every day, sleep. You've got to sleep. Give, smile out loud, check your assumptions, and
And when all else fails, reconnect yourself to something bigger than yourself.
love it.
Go forth and conquer. Have a great day. Make it a great week. We'll see you here next Monday. If you haven't done that, click subscribe on YouTube and invite your friends, family members, and others around you to do the same. I love you, but Giovanni loves you more.